Welcome to The Deepest Cut, a podcast about the movement from painful experiences to meaningful music. I'm your host, Matt Connor. If you grew up in church, or if you've read your Old Testament many times, there's likely a familiar scene to you in Exodus 17. It goes something like this. The Amalekites are set to attack the Israelites who are following Moses through the wilderness. Moses tells Joshua to go lead his men in battle while he goes to the top of a hill with his interns, not really, named Aaron and Hur. The key here, for whatever reason, was the position of Moses' hands. When they were raised, the Israelites were winning the war, but when he lowered his hands, the Amalekites had the advantage. The key verse here, according to the 50-some-odd sermons I've heard in my life about this passage, is this. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. If we can set aside the battlefield violence for a second, it's a beautiful picture for friendship and the power of community to lift us up when we lack the necessary strength to endure. So many of the stories shared so far here on The Deepest Cut, and even ones that we will hear, have put some of our favorite songwriters in those positions of Aaron and Hur. We picture them as our musical friends who've helped so many listeners lift their own arms up a bit higher with resonant songs of hope. For singer-songwriter Carolyn Arends, however, the story is a bit different. While her 14-album catalog is filled with beautiful songs that inspire and encourage, the one song she says that was the most difficult to write and release was born from others helping to lift her arms, so to speak, as she struggled to grieve the loss of her mother. Without the help of mentors and others around her, she'd yet to find the right words for a way forward. On this episode of The Deepest Cut, we asked Carolyn to talk about the origins of her song To Cry For You, along with her important work at Renovare, and what role professionalism has played in her willingness to write from a broken place. We loved what Carolyn had to say, and we know you will too. Here's our conversation with singer-songwriter and really so much more, Carolyn Arends. Hello and welcome to The Deepest Cut. My name is Matt Connor and I'm your host. I'm just so thrilled to be sitting across from singer-songwriter and honestly so many more hats than I think people may realize. I'm here with Carolyn Arends. Carolyn, first of all, how are you? I'd love for you to say hello. And can you describe the many hats that you wear these days? Not literal hats, although you can describe those too if you want.
Yes. Well, as a Canadian, I'd like to tell you that I mostly wear a toque, which a lot of Americans don't know what that is. I think it's something you would call a beanie, but it's cold in Canada right now. So I wear a toque a lot. But yes, hi, Matt. It's wonderful to be with you. Thanks for this invitation. And yeah, hats that I wear metaphorically, singer-songwriter for sure, and then do quite a bit of other kinds of writing, columns for magazines and things like that. I am the director of education for Renovare, which is a spiritual formation organization, and get to do all kinds of wonderful things with them. Some of them involving music and some of them other ways of communicating.
Obviously, we want to dive into our whole subject matter here on The Deepest Cut, but I'm also just so enamored or appreciative of the work that you do there. Can you tell us a little bit more about the organization? And because I feel like maybe some people don't know, and I find it fascinating and needed. And just wondered if you could give it like a brief rundown there before we dive into the musical side.
Yes. So Renovare was founded in like 88 by Richard Foster. And some people will know Richard Foster as the guy who wrote Celebration of Discipline and
Prayer.
yeah. Oh, isn't that a beautiful book? I love that book. Streams of Living Water, devotional classics. And he founded it with a little band of friends, another guy named Dallas Willard and some other people from all different kinds of streams of the Christian tradition. What they had in common was they loved Jesus, and they had this kind of vision that Jesus not only can save us from our sin, but can actively work in our lives to make us healthy and whole and holy and live beautiful lives here and now. And that we can have some intentionality about cooperating with him in that. And it seems obvious, but it was something that, in a lot of our church circles, because we don't want to tip into legalism, we almost act like there's nothing we can do to cooperate with God and how He wants to heal us and make us holy. So he and the community have been just kind of championed like the classic spiritual disciplines, which doesn't sound very inviting on first blush, but just turns out to be like ways people who follow Jesus for the last couple thousand years have been like, hey, try this. This helps. And so we do just a bunch of different things to help people that are interested in that, be a little bit more intentional about their life with God. And so we always say like the people that we work with are looking for one of three things, two of three things, or three of these three things, which is deeper intimacy with God, kind of ongoing personal transformation where they feel like, oh yeah, I'm getting better. I'm growing. I love people better. This thing that always plagued me is getting better. So deeper intimacy with God, ongoing inner transformation that spills out into their outer lives, and then a community to pursue those things with. That's what people come hungry for. So I oversee something called the Ranfari Institute, which is a 2-year kind of deep dive program online and in person that people go through. We have a big book club, that couple thousand people, like an online book club that we do together every year, and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
That's great. That's great. Is there an intersection for you between the musical side that I think many people would know and like, are you able to marry those things?
Yeah, it feels remarkably integrated to me sometimes in ways that I go, "Wow, how did that happen?" And I think some of the reasons why it feels integrated is I think music for me has always been it's a lot of different things, and we can have a big long deep talk about, sort of why we have music and what it does for us. But one of the things it does for us, I think, is kind of allows us to open ourselves up, and in my context, the way I've always thought about it is open ourselves up to kind of the flow or work of the Spirit in kind of pre and post cognitive ways and pre and post language ways. And so it's just a wonderful, in the context of spiritual formation, it's just this wonderful, I hate to say tool or resource because I don't want to be utilitarian, but it really is in that context. Like it's amazing how you could be teaching an idea, and in my case, because I usually read a song about something before I even understand it, I'll be teaching about something and I'll be like, well, I have a song about this. And so when I first started doing that, in a teaching context, I'd be like, oh, this is like really West Side Story. Like I'm bursting into song. Um, but over the years I've seen, yeah, like you can teach on something and then you can offer a song about it, and it just allows a different part of the brain and a different part of the heart and the body to open up to something that might be helpful and healing, or to some kind of direct encounter with the Spirit that is behind all of our efforts. So there's that. And then it's just, I think, my whole career, probably the main thing I've been writing about is, years ago, before my first album, I read The Sacred Journey by Frederick Buechner. And that book has this thesis: God is speaking into and out of the thick of our days, and we just need to pay attention. And as a person whose head is always in the clouds, I'm just a hazard to everyone around me on the road because I'm always like daydreaming. I think really my first album was called I Can Hear You. And it was about like paying attention to just the details of my life, because on the conviction that God was speaking through them. My 14th album, which just came out a couple of years ago, is called Recognition. And it's like, oh, I almost didn't recognize you. So it's really been the same theme all the way along. And there's huge resonance with this invitation to pay attention, to kind of assume that God is kind of clearing his throat and making overtures to us and all the stuff that's going on around us. That's a huge part of kind of a spiritual formation approach to life with God. And so, it all feels like it has a lot of continuity, and I'm really grateful for it.
Well, obviously, I want to dive in to not only the song that you brought, but some of the context here. You just said, I often write a song in order to understand something, right? To find your way through it, it seems. Is that true of like traumatic, like more experiential things for you? Traumatic moments, painful processes, etc.
It is, and in the case of this particular song that I brought, yes and no. Do you want should we talk about what it's about, or do you want me to answer that question first?
We're the only 2 in charge here, so you can talk about whatever angle you want, but
Okay, we can do whatever we want.
I guess my initial question was more about, like, in general,
In general.
is songwriting that part of that process for you to work through your own, trauma and or, like, difficult circumstances? But certainly as much as you wanna talk about, to cry for you, we're welcome to that too.
Right. Well, yeah, let's talk about it in general, and then we can circle back and see
Sure,
how it
sure.
applies to Cry for You. I would say absolutely the original impetus for becoming a songwriter was, yeah, it was just kind of this intuitive, again, kind of resource to process the world around me. And we're talking at like 11 or 12 years old. As like a really painfully shy kid who had, it took me quite a while to sort of find my voice. And songwriting was definitely the way that happened. So it was kind of prayer, journaling, trying to make sense of the world around me. So for sure, I would say it's an interesting question, and I can't wait to listen to the series to hear what other songwriters say, because I would say in later years, I feel like maybe I have to have done a little bit more processing before I can write a song, and I'm not sure if that's even good. I wonder if I could get back some of that raw I'm just singing about this, and I'm just finding words for this, out of that heart cry and prayer. It's almost I almost wonder if, like, my process has been, like, a little bit professionalized, and I would love to get back to something, more raw, and actually the song that we're gonna talk about is kind of a winding road to be able to get to something more raw. So my answer to your question, your excellent question, is yes and no, and sometimes not. Very precise answer.
Sure, sure. So how does that work for this song then? I mean, you said it was, if it's that both and.
Yeah. So, okay, so can I talk about kind of where the song comes from?
Yeah, yeah, please, yeah.
So the song comes from the death of my mom, and it was extraordinarily close to my mom. She really genuinely was my best friend, and I say that knowing there are people listening to this conversation that will really resonate with them, and other ones who are like, "Oh man, the big grief of my life is I didn't have that kind of friendship with one or both of my parents." But in my case, incredibly close to my mom, and she had a long illness, lots of times when we thought she was going to die, and she fought her way back, and it was a huge roller coaster for a number of years. And then in October of 2018, she passed, October 22nd, 2018. And I thought I had done like a lot of like advanced grieving. There'd been so many times we thought we were going to lose her, and it's not, it wasn't like a surprise when she died. But I was I was really undone by it, and really had for months just kind of had this narrative with myself of, okay, Aaron, you got to pull it together. Losing your mom is really sad. You would have liked lots more time with her, but it's not tragic. People who have lost people horribly out of season, much younger, not after a long illness. So you need to, like, come on, pull it together here. And yeah, whenever anybody would ask me how I was doing, I would feel the tears come to my eyes, but I would swallow hard and I would try to keep my composure. But I had this feeling inside, like, that I was walking on the edge of a cliff, and the cliff was I felt like I was crumbling inside. Like, I did not like how I felt. So this went on for several months, and I had great mentors. I had one of my colleagues, Chris, had said to me, "Hey, look, this is going to be seismic. Your parents, those of us who grow up with parents, they're like a mountain range that you've oriented your life by your whole life, and now you've lost one of the mountains." And I had lost my dad several years early too, so now I had lost both mountains. So he's like, "You should expect to feel deeply disoriented." And that was right. And then I have another colleague, Trevor, who I was at one of these Renovaré Institute residencies directing the program. And he just walked up to me and he said, Carolyn, the only way through this is through this. You're not going to be able to go around it. So I had these wise mentors, but I just kept sort of white knuckling my way through it. And then one day, our whole Renovaré team is remote, so we meet on Zoom. And one day we were meeting on Zoom and we're just talking about our work and like nothing, there was nothing problematic going on in what we were talking about. And I just noticed that tears were just streaming down my face. And I thought, I think I'm in trouble here. I think I'm going to have to do something about this. So I finally made an appointment with a grief counselor. And in this is probably like a 6-month period leading up to going to see this grief counselor. Did not write a thing. I don't even think I played music or just played it when I had to if I had a role somewhere. I finally went to see a grief counselor, just bawled my head off in her office. And she listened. She was very kind. And she said, well, the first thing is you have to stop comparing your grief to anybody else's. Like, that's just not fruitful. It's not a sliding scale. Like, you can only go through your own grief, and your own grief, therefore, is the worst grief, right? So she was like, stop that. And then secondly, I'm going to give you an assignment to take 30 minutes every day by yourself to grieve. And this sounded like the most horrible suggestion in the world. I was just afraid that if I started to cry, I would never stop. She said, no, you trust me, you'll stop. But you have to start, like my friend Trevor said, going, you can't go around this. You got to go through this.
Yeah.
So in that context, I started trying to do that. And then I don't remember the exact timeline, but very shortly after that, a drummer friend of mine, his wife died really unexpectedly. And he asked me to sing at the funeral. So I came to the funeral, and her young adult son was a guy named Jordan. And he got up to give the eulogy, which I thought was very brave. And he said at the beginning of the eulogy, first of all, if you're wondering if Jordy's going to cry, of course I'm going to cry. It is my honor to cry for her.
Wow.
Yeah. And that kid, with that one sentence, he totally reframed this grieving process that I'd been fighting so hard, maybe even trying to be brave for my mom, and made me realize, no, this is how this is how I honor my mother and my father. It's how I honor her even in death. This is the shape my love for her is going to take for a while. And it's not embarrassing to cry for her. It is my honor to cry for her. Really, really helped me a lot. Still hated how, letting myself be as sad as I was it's just not fun, and that's one of the things I hope this song says to people is like, it is actually supposed to feel this bad. Like, you're not doing it wrong. Like, it actually does feel this bad. And if it was, it also can be, grief can be, there's a line in the song, I guess grief is the work that love must do. So it is my honor to cry for you. So that is all the kind of etymology of the song. But I didn't immediately write a song about it, which is interesting. I actually had a column due for Faith Today, a magazine I was writing regularly for. I actually wrote about it there first, which is interesting because normally I think I would have probably written a song about it first. And then that column seemed to help some people. And then I don't know how much later, maybe a couple months after writing the column, I thought maybe I'm ready to try to sing about this. But I was like almost afraid that, I just, probably some people listening to this and maybe you like really know how to go into grief and embrace it and travel through it. I do not. I'm just not good at it. And so I was almost afraid, if I started trying to write a song about it, like that would be too much of a can opener and I would kind of regress, But I just remember being in the basement of our house and starting to croak it out and, wrote it pretty quickly. Probably wrote it in an evening. So that's how it came to be. So kind of a winding road.
You brought up something here, and I'm not sure if these things tie together. So just feel free to say no. But you said, maybe I have, like, a level of professionalism to my songwriting that has paved the process over in a way that keeps me from getting to this soil that's just all kinds of messy. And then you mentioned being afraid to fully open this, quote, "can of worms," right? And it just makes me think, is that maybe more than this song? Has there been a working fear, or is there an ongoing working fear in the songwriting process of full spillage, of that maybe it's seen as a negative thing to like unresponsibly just open it all up?
That's a good question. It's I appreciate this therapy session. I'll send you a check. No,
Sorry. And if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to.
no, 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 no. It is a great question, and I think if there has been or is a fear like that, you know, the process of finally getting to the place where I could write this song. And then, maybe in a minute we can talk about the process of like, oh, okay, now was this just my therapy or is this something to share with other people, right? That was like kind of a testing process too, and I can tell you how that went. There are those songwriters that just open a vein, right? And it's just like raw, visceral, right? And it's powerful and it's beautiful. I don't know if I've ever been exactly that kind of songwriter. I think usually I like to either have or write my way to some sort of perspective on what it is that I'm singing about. And I think that generally that's okay. That's my voice. That's how, that's what I kind of have to offer. Something that's, quite crafted and has a perspective to offer. But I think I will take this as a challenge to see, like, what.
I didn't mean to present you with a
Oh,
challenge.
no, 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 I like it, I like it. I like the challenge, yeah, I mean, I like the challenge of thinking about, could I even let myself just, like, what would that be like, And this is I mean, it's so related actually even to the song we're talking about because I'm a person who lives in my head, but because I'm actually really sensitive, but want to stay in control. I've been realizing, like, gosh, I'm in my 50s and I'm just sort of figuring this out. When I was a little kid, I cried every day of kindergarten. For no reason. I was just like a super sensitive kid. And one time I got sent to the principal's office for crying, and my mom came to pick me up and she said, "Honey, why were you crying?" And I said, "Because I was so afraid I was going to cry." Right. So this was like a formative journey for me, was learning how to feel my feelings without, and still be able to navigate the world. And so, yeah, so you're asking a real live question for me. Like, I literally just realized this weekend I got really emotional about something, saying goodbye to a colleague, and I was so embarrassed. And then I thought, why am I what is up with you? Like, why are you so embarrassed? And so, like, kind of just tracing that all that back, like, how can you be, a sensitive person that really feels his or her feelings and still navigate the world and do the work that you're called to do. It would really help if I was a pretty crier. Some people they can just, like, a crystalline tear rolls down their face and it's kind of beautiful. And me, I mean, there's snot and contortions and it's horrible. So, when I have to sing at somebody's funeral or something and I'm like, oh, I hope I don't cry. And they're like, no, it'll be fine if you cry. I'm like, no, you don't understand. There will be no song. There will just be gasping sounds. So anyways,
Contortions is such a good word there, by the way.
yeah, oh, 100% contortions, yeah. So anyways, yeah, I think this song for me is really helpful to think about, like, okay, yeah, but just in general as a human, how do you navigate the world as a sensitive person without completely repressing and locking yourself off? And then what does that mean if you're a songwriter? Yeah. What in terms of what you offer the world? So I don't know. I'll check in with you in a year and let you know.
Sounds good. Was that a difficult decision to decide this is a song worthy of presentation to others?
Yes, million percent, million percent. I thought at first, hey, it's too personal, and because I really do think there are some songs you write that are just for your own therapy. But actually, what happened, this is a very rabbit roomy thing. I was probably a week after I wrote it, I was scheduled to be a keynote at Hutchmeet. This was in 2019. And they had organized a kind of mental health night and said, is there anything you could share about? And I was very tentatively said, well, I could talk about my grief journey, maybe, and read this piece I had written for Faith Today and shared the song. And so I did that, which was very nerve wracking, but then deeply moving to talk to some people there who had had recent losses, who just, I realized I could do for them what Jordy at that funeral had done for me, which is to reframe grief. And so then I guess that was 2019, 2020. I was working on my recognition project. And the question was, are we going to put this song on the record? In the form that I offered it in at Hutchmeet, it was guitar based. And then my duo partner, Spencer, said, why don't you try it on piano? I just do the very odd thing on piano. So we moved it to piano. And then Kristen Wilkinson in Nashville is an amazing, she's a viola player and an amazing arranger. And I asked her if she could arrange something for string quartet. And she she arranged this violin line that like I still actually can't listen to without crying. Yeah. And then my daughter, who's in her early 20s, Beth, she's an amazing singer, but almost never sings. And I said, hey, total coercion, she had a very wonderful relationship with her grandma, my mom. And I said, hey, grandma would be so proud, if you would sing a harmony on this with me. Just total shameless manipulation. And she did it for love.
You're allowed to do that.
Yeah, for love of me and love her grandma. So that I think the harmony is just kind of magic on it. So I was pleased that it sounded like it felt for me, like that it sonically seemed to embody some of what was going on in my own body. And then it was like, okay, how do we share this with the world? This is one of the many albums that came out during COVID. I ended up just recording this really goofy video and probably quite dangerous. I don't commend this to anyone, but I just put my iPhone on like a holder on the dash of my car and went for a drive and sung along to the track. And the reason I had an instinct to do that is because I think many of us do our best grieving in the car when we're by ourselves in the car.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's just kind of a safe, you're by yourself, you're in this kind of contained space. There's something about the act of driving that kind of uses your brain enough to disengage your filter a little bit. And then, I also do a lot of songwriting in the car for the same reason. But anyway, so we posted this little video of me just singing along to the song in the car. And man, I think it got like 500,000 or more views on Facebook. And that entered this season of hearing from so many people what a gift it was to have their grief reframed that way. And so I am really glad that I shared it. I mean, and so many people shared it themselves, saying, it is my honor to cry for, and then the name of the person that they were grieving. So it felt very vulnerable and exposed, but absolutely worth it. And kind of taught me that, part of becoming fully human, which is kind of our job while we're here, is to do the hard and holy work of grieving. And that won't mean not everybody cries as their grieving process. For me, clearly I've been a crier from the beginning and fighting it, all these years. But yeah, whatever it means to grieve well, to learn how to grieve well as part of the hard and holy work of becoming human, whether that's crying or not. I hope, I've seen that this song can encourage people to do that hard work.
I love that. By the way, is Jordy aware? Have you ever tracked him down and said, you reframed it for me and I put that out there? Like that his reframing continues to reframe.
Reframe, yeah, the gift that keeps on giving. Yes, I haven't spoken directly to him, but I have talked to his dad and said, can you please tell Jordy this? And then, one time actually I was sitting in a car and somebody tapped on the window of the car, like just in my own neighborhood. Somebody tapped on the window of the car and like rolled down the window. And she said something like, "I'm Jordy's aunt," or something like that. And she was like, "I know, I've heard your song, and we're so," they even see that as, part of Jordy's mom's legacy. So yeah, it's kind of cool how those things weave together.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, Carolyn, we'd love for you to introduce your song and let our audience kind of hear in full what we've been discussing.
Yeah, well, thank you for the privilege of talking about this. I can't wait to hear the whole series. And for those of you who have listened along, thank you. It is an honor to be with you. And here's my song. It is an honor to cry for you.
There's a lump in my throat. There's a knot in my chest. I am tired to the bone, but I cannot rest. But it's only right to feel like I do, 'cause it is my honor to cry for you. All the memories come back like the tide rolling in, and the current is strong. I go under again, so I hold my breath. What else can I do? 'Cause it is my honor to cry for you. Blessed are the ones who weep, 'cause every tear is proof of ties that bind so strong and deep that death cannot undo. So it is my honor to cry for you. I've got more than a hunch that you're somewhere so good. It'd be wrong to come back, even if you could. I will see you again, but until I do, it is my honor to cry for you. Blessed are the ones who weep, 'cause every tear is proof of ties that bind so strong and deep that death cannot undo. So it is my honor to cry for you. There's a lump in my throat, there's a knot in my chest, but the ache in my soul tells me I am blessed. 'Cause when the sorrow is great, the love is too, and it is my honor to cry for you. I guess grief is the work that love must do. So it is my honor to cry for you.
You've been listening to The Deepest Cut, part of the Rabbit Room Podcast Network. Audio production and theme music by Isaac Vining. Logo and identity work by Meg Cook. The Deepest Cut was created and hosted by me, Matt Connor. Thank you so much for listening.